Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie and last month it was my birthday, so I bought myself some decks. Yes, that's right, this is just a good old-fashioned haul video. It's been a rough year and I had my second birthday in lockdown. And before these decks, I actually hadn't bought myself a deck in, I think, about a year. So it's been a little while since I've had new decks to play around with. I do have quite a few now though. But I just thought we could have a bit of a fun video, a bit of a hangout video, and I'll show you the decks that I bought for myself for my 31st birthday. So I really haven't worked with these decks a whole lot, so clearly these are not reviews. This is just a bit of a show and tell of the stuff I bought myself lately. I thought it would be fun to share. And I guess it's a little bit of a sneak peek for some of the decks you might be seeing featured on my channel in the coming months. So firstly, I bought myself the limited edition box set in a tin of the white Numen Tarot from Liminal 11. This is a deck I've been interested in really ever since it came out, but I did kind of really want the limited edition set, mostly because it comes with a little sort of companion oracle deck that you can't get elsewhere. But between shipping and exchange rates, it was just quite expensive, so I'd been putting it off for a while. But as I was making my birthday wish list for my family, which I do every year, I went over to just have a look and see if the limited edition set was still available. And not only was it still available, it was on sale and they were doing free international shipping. So I bought it for myself instead. And I'm not normally a big sucker for like limited edition box sets. I think partly because I'm not big on like tarot like bags. I'm not big on tarot spread cloths. But I do think that a second like oracle deck, a companion oracle deck, is a really cool thing to include in a limited edition box set. Like that felt quite special and unique to me. And it is a very sweet little oracle deck. It's black and white with some just hints of gold accents, and it's all different constellations. And one of the things that I really love is that the Southern Cross is included, which is a constellation that is like literally on the Australian flag. But I just, you know, it's a constellation that you can't really see from the majority of the Northern Hemisphere. So that feels quite special to me. The white Numen Tarot is beautiful. I knew it was beautiful. Obviously, I've seen it online, but there's something, it's one of those decks that, at least for me, I was sort of taken aback by how much I liked it in person. Obviously, I was expecting to like it, but there was something about it that I think translated better in person than I had seen on camera. Now, I have heard people compare this deck to the Sasarai Bito, which is one of my favorite decks. But when I was looking at it online, I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't see it. But now that I have it in my hands, I don't know, I get the comparison. I think it's something to do with just like the colors and then the expressiveness of the characters, like their facial features, their body language. All of that stuff comes through really strongly for me, and that's one of my favorite things about the Sasarai Bito Tarot. One thing I will note though is I didn't realize that there was sort of like this fuzzy filter over the cards. I don't know if I'll be able to pick it up on camera, but you can see it even in the borders. You know, instead of being white, they almost look like there's like some fuzzy static on them or something, and that does feed through like the image as well. And it's not going to be a deal breaker for me, but I don't think that's my favorite thing. I think I would have preferred the colors just to be quite vibrant and to not have like this, I don't know, it almost makes them feel flatter, I think. Like I said, it's not a deal breaker. I only point that out because I wasn't expecting it. I didn't know that that was there. It sort of took me by surprise. But I really like the artwork. I'm really drawn into this deck. I'm very excited to work with it. So this next deck is a deck I know a lot of you love, and I was really interested in this deck too. But again, with like shipping and exchange rates and everything, it was just quite expensive for me to get. And so I had planned to sort of wait until it was restocked at Little Red Tarot, and then I can order a few decks, and like it's a flat shipping rate, so it's like kind of makes more sense for me to purchase indie decks that way. However, lucky me, managed to score a secondhand copy on a Australian Facebook like buy swap sell group. This is the Gentle Tarot, of course, and it is beautiful. I love being able to get secondhand decks when I can. Obviously, it means that I don't have to pay the exorbitant international shipping fees, but on top of that, it's just nice to, I don't know, rehome and repurpose things that aren't being used, you know? And I think from memory, the person I bought this from said that they bought it as a gift for someone in their family, but they weren't super into it or into tarot. So their loss is my gain, essentially. I was a little hesitant to get this deck originally because it's not an entirely animal deck, but it is fairly heavy on the animal symbolism, which, as I've said time and time again, is not my like preferred style of deck. However, it's the artwork that did it for me. I just love these colors. I love the sort of cartoony style, but it still feels really alive and expressive. Some of these colors are just so beautiful. Like, this is absolutely my sort of color palette. And at the end of the day, I've just heard such good things about this deck. So on top of being attracted to the artwork itself, I was curious to just sort of give this deck a go and see if I could make it work for myself. And what better way to try an indie deck out than to nab yourself a secondhand copy, you know? Okay, so this next deck is a little bit of a left of field pick. It's a deck that I've looked at on and off for literally years. I think when I first saw it, I really liked the artwork, but I was a little intimidated by it. It's a bit of a different take on the tarot system. It's not just like a Rider-Waite-Smith knockoff or clone, you know, it's quite unique. And so I think when I was first sort of getting into tarot, that was a little intimidating to me. And I can't really explain to you what compelled me to purchase it now, but I did. And I don't really know how to pronounce it. I've heard it pronounced so many different ways. I've heard it pronounced the Shimonette Tarot, the Shimonette Tarot, the Cheimonette. I don't know. I'm just going to avoid attempting to pronounce it, but I'm sure you've all seen and heard of this deck. And if you haven't, let me introduce you. I love that the cards are a little bit smaller than a traditional size. And this, even though it's an international indie deck, I don't know if they were having a sale, but it wasn't, you know, super expensive. It was relatively affordable considering some prices for indie decks at the moment. It's not quite the same production quality, but this art is beautiful and I don't have anything like this in my collection. There's a lot of really beautiful watercolors and like ink line drawings, I guess. I'm not an artist clearly, but that is how I would describe the deck. And there's this sort of like surrealist, almost alien element to the deck. I love that the Fool is like the one card that is unfinished in the deck, that we've got this beautiful, evocative, and like so much movement in the card with the line drawing, but it's not filled in with color. And I think that works so well for the Fool. Obviously the Fool is at the beginning of the journey, but on top of that, it's sort of outside of the major arcana. It's the unnumbered card. So to have it stand out so strongly from the rest of the deck, I think is just, it's really clever. This deck is really beautiful, but some of it borders on the creepy or unsettling. And I think there's just so much going on in these cards that there's a lot that you can explore. It's one of those decks that I think you could spend an awful lot of time getting to know and sort of still never get to the bottom of. I think the artist has captured and managed to convey the emotion of each card really effectively. Like, you look at these cards and you feel something. And I think that's, I don't know, the execution there is really well done. So like I said, this is a deck unlike almost any other deck in my collection. So I'm sort of just looking forward to, I don't know, seeing what happens when I work with this deck, you know? Like, I think it's beautiful. I really like the artwork. And when I, you know, just look through the deck, I'm moved by a lot of the cards. It feels watery and full of emotion and just really evocative to me. And something about it makes me a little bit nervous, which I don't know, I'm kind of excited by. So the next is another secondhand deck, and honestly, this was another impulse buy. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this deck, but I got a bargain on Gumtree. What can I say? I got the original Mythic Tarot. It's not like the first printing with the black backs and everything. This was like the 96 edition, I think. But it is still like the original artwork. And like I said, I'm not really sure what compelled me to pick this up other than I saw it secondhand for a good deal. And I was just kind of curious, you know? I've picked this deck up before because I found it for a bargain and gave it to a friend because I knew that they wanted the deck. And so like I've seen this deck before, but I don't think I've ever worked with it. And at this point, I just feel like it's a bit of a classic. Like, I know so many people like learnt with this deck. It was their first deck, and I don't know, there is something quite pretty about it. So yeah, I'm honestly not sure what I'm going to be doing with this deck. It may or may not be one I keep, but I just thought, you know, for the bargain that I got it was worth giving it a go, you know? Now for the deck that I have spent the most time with out of all of these, and that is the beautiful Oriens Tarot by Ambi-Sun. I have the little pocket edition, and to be honest, I've also ordered the larger edition because I'm really enjoying this deck that much. It hasn't arrived yet though, so we're just going to be talking about the mini for now. This is a beautiful animal deck, and as I've mentioned, animal decks aren't usually my thing, but this one is just so, so beautiful. And on top of that, the artist is from Melbourne, so I just really wanted to support a local artist. And lucky for me, it turns out I really like the deck as well. There's also this really fun galactic element to the deck and the artwork, which I think is just really interesting and definitely gives this deck a bit of a unique spin. You know, so many animal decks are really earthy and grounded. This one feels like celestial. It's beautiful. I love that the animals that have been chosen are really diverse in terms of, you know, where they come from. And I think they are representative of animals that we don't always see in tarot decks. I've mentioned before that one of the things that I don't love about animal decks is that so often they're very northern hemisphere centric, specifically like North America or like European. And as beautiful as I think those decks are, absolutely beautiful, no challenge from me there, I just, like, those animals I can't really relate to. You know, like I've said to Sammy Menzo before that like a deer is so fantastical and strange to me that it's basically like a unicorn. Like they're on the same level to me. Like they're so unreal in my own experience that they're both fantastical beings. So even though this deck does include animals from all over the world, there's enough in here that I know and love. You know, like there's a sugar glider, there's a standard poodle, there's a cockatoo. I love that there's a cockatoo, and I love that it's the Page of Swords. So yeah, there's just enough animals that I'm familiar with to where like this deck felt like it was for me as well, you know? But on top of that, I don't know, there's something about the way that the animals are represented. They just make sense to me in a way that other animal decks that I've used or looked at just didn't. I just really love the choices that have been made. I think it's one of the most beautiful decks I've ever owned. I love that I have the little mini version, and the artwork is just striking. I'm also really glad that I got the guidebook because it is brilliant. It's beautiful the way that it's set out. You get so much information, but it never feels too much. Like everything feels meaningful, and it's just beautifully presented. Like you get artwork throughout. It's just stunning. On top of that, I will say that the creator or whoever deals with the sales, at least from the experience that I I sort of buggered up my order a little bit. I made the order late at night, what can I say? And I thought I was ordering like the deck and the guidebook, but what I actually ordered was the deck and guidebook set and the guidebook. And they got back to me super quickly. They refunded me for the book that I didn't mean to order but did. And I know that's not something like super out of the ordinary, but just my experience was, you know, top notch. Like I had a really good experience purchasing, even though I made a mistake with my purchase. The deck came beautifully presented and packaged, you know, like my whole experience with the creator and the website was really good. So I also just wanted to mention that. Then the Chrysalis Tarot, a deck that has obviously been out for a long time, that I've seen on and off for a long time, that I've always liked the artwork of, but kind of like the Shimonette, someone please tell me how to pronounce that. Like that deck, I think I was a little intimidated by this when I first got back on the tarot scene. It's quite unusual. Like it does follow the tarot structure, but pretty much all of the cards, all of the suits are renamed. And what got me thinking about this deck again was actually Saturnarium's video that I recommended recently, the like spring decks that they're working with. I think this was one of them. Or they've mentioned this deck somewhere on their channel, and I just thought it was beautiful. And I don't know, I couldn't get it out of my head. Other times when I've seen this deck, I've sort of thought it was beautiful, but also thought it wasn't for me. Whereas this time I just could not get it out of my head. So when I went back to work for the first time last week, I decided to pick up myself a copy. And I have to say, I was sort of not exactly sure what to expect. I thought it could kind of go either way with this deck when I pulled it out and started working with it. But I was captivated. You know those moments when you pull a deck out and you sort of are a little bit breathless and you sort of just have those, like that connection with the deck, or at least that spark. I had that spark. And it was a really nice feeling. The colors in this are so beautiful. Like this deck and this artwork, I can't get over it. And even though it does differ quite a lot from like the traditional tarot, like the Rider-Waite-Smith system in particular, I think the way that it's been, I don't know, it's so thoughtfully put together that even if some of the cards differ from what I'm used to, like I can follow along with the intention and the purpose of the deck. Like none of the changes just feel like, I don't know, accidents. They all feel so intentional that I'm happy to get behind them, even when they're almost the opposite of what my understanding of a card is. Also, the Emperor in this deck literally made me cry. A lot of you will know from my tarot and practice that the Emperor has been coming up for me a lot lately, but it is also a card that I don't super identify with, or has been the card that I've found most challenging in the tarot. And so for an Emperor card to be so beautiful and moving, and I don't know, just something about it just touched me, you know? So that moment was very special with this deck too. I have already done one reading with this deck and it was so good that I desperately want to work with this deck more. Like I'm captivated, and I'm really glad that I got it this time of the year because it feels like a very I don't know, not specifically spring summer deck, but it does have that phase sort of feeling to it. So I'm not saying that it's only a seasonal deck, but it just feels quite exciting to have it at this time of the year. And the colors, I was not, like I've seen this deck so many times, but something about them in person just did something to me. I don't know. This is one of the decks that has really like surprised me. I really like this deck. And then I don't know that this really counts because obviously I bought this deck originally in January last year, but I didn't open it up until recently. And then I managed to get myself a different copy because I didn't like the cardstock. But the Children of Litha is the deck that I'm working with at the moment for my current tarot and practice that I'm filming. And the lovely Tom Benjamin sent me his copy that is the matte cardstock because I was so upset about the rose petal finish on the edition that I bought. So this is sort of a bit of a grey area, I know. Like it's sort of new to me, but also not. I mean, like this literal physical copy came the day before my birthday, I think. So it did sort of feel like a birthday present, even if it wasn't. So thanks, Tom Benjamin. And then finally, the deck that literally just arrived today so I could finally film this video. I did order it before my birthday, but the postage in Australia has been terrible. So it's the 5th Spirit Tarot. This one, what a cutie. How did I miss this when it was released? I suppose I did have my break, didn't I? I feel like I missed quite a lot of decks that were released in like the year or so that I sort of was not really super into tarot. So this deck I managed to get from Two Sides Tarot, which is sort of like the Australian equivalent of Little Red Tarot. So if you're in Australia and you're looking to buy some indie decks, definitely check out Two Sides Tarot. She stocks some beautiful indie decks and you don't have to pay the ridiculous international shipping. And a few things drew me to this deck. Obviously, I just like the artwork. I like how it feels sort of really pared back. The imagery feels like each little bit of symbolism has been very intentionally chosen. I like the ethos behind the deck. I love how representative and diverse it is. And I also really enjoy these sort of like semi-scenic pips. I have spoken about this before, how some of my favorite decks are like the decks that, you know, aren't fully scenic, like they don't have like a full scene going on in the minor arcana, but there's sort of enough to get you going. Like they're not a Marseille or a true pip deck. They usually don't feature people, but like the way that like maybe the soup representations are like situated in the card, things like that do sort of give you a good insight into the message of the card. And sort of like my experience with the Chrysalis Tarot and the Emperor card in that deck, the Emperor in this deck is just so beautiful. I've never seen an Emperor represented in this way. And I think because the Emperor is coming up for me so much, like towards the latter half of this year, it's a card I'm really trying to explore different dynamics of, or different elements of, or, you know, different faces of, I suppose. And to see the Emperor represented in this way, I don't know, is just really helping me better appreciate this card and the nuance of it and the complexities of it. So yeah, another beautiful deck to add to my collection. So that is my tarot haul, the decks that I've sort of purchased for myself in the last month or two in the lead up to my birthday. I definitely feel like I have like a lot of really exciting decks that definitely are, a lot of them are quite unlike anything else I have in my collection. And I'm just feeling super charged and excited to explore these new aspects of tarot. I think, you know, I sort of had my break not only from my channel, but from tarot more generally. And I've sort of come back with this new excitement and passion. And I don't know, I'm just really enjoying exploring different decks at the moment. And it was just really nice to buy myself some presents. Yes, some new decks, some secondhand decks, some decks I only had to pay postage for. Thank you, Ben. Some indie decks, some mass market decks. Like, I don't know, it's an exciting time. I'm having fun. So I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me and just getting to have a bit of a sneak peek at some of the decks that I've invited into my life recently and some of the decks that you might be seeing on my channel in the coming months. Let me know if you have any of these decks and how you've gotten on with them. I always love talking to you in the comments. And of course, before I go, I have to say a big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. And an especially big thank you goes to Livia, Lynette Brown, Laurie, and Ian Yitzhak. My patrons support me and my content and help me make these videos for free for all of you to watch. So thank you so much to them. And thank you too for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, so much love. Bye.